All right, good morning everyone and welcome to this week's Mag Plus webinar. My name is Mike. I'm the Chief Product Officer for Mag Plus and the voice of all of our tutorial videos. If you've watched any of those, I'm the Hi, I'm Mike guy. Today in this webinar we're going to take you through a couple of more slightly advanced features. We've done a couple of webinars, including one last week, on how to get started. So if you haven't watched any of those yet, I'm going to show you first on our website where you can find those. So if you're brand new to the Mag Plus platform, we've got another 45-minute or so webinar that'll take you through how to download the tools, install them, start building things, etc. And today we're going to cover another feature that's part of our layout system, our layout architecture, called snapping, that gives you a little bit more precise control over how your layouts look when the users are using them. And then we're going to get into video and audio, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to drop a video into your layout, all the different design options you have around how that video becomes part of your layout, part of your storytelling. And then finally we'll show you audio, which is equally simple, as well as kind of a cool new feature we have called Playlist that you can use for audio as well. So starting here on the website, I've just opened up magplus.com. If you haven't been here already, this is where you can come to download the tools for free. Just click that download button and that'll take you in. And if you go, the part of this I really want to point out is the help and inspiration area over here. This is really your resource for learning how to use the tools, finding some of the best tricks that other people are doing, asking questions here in our forum and diving into our forums to see what challenges other people have encountered and how they've overcome them. We monitor those forums and our great support team answers them all the time. Over here on the free webinars section, which you might have found already if you signed up for this, this is where you can find all of our back webinars as well. So if you want to dive into how to get started, some of the new things we just released in 3.0, how to use HTML, etc., you can jump in and watch any of these recorded. So that's under the help and inspiration section here on magplus.com. So now let's jump in and start building some stuff. I'm going to open up InDesign. I'm using CS 5.5. You can use 4, 5, or 5.5. I'm going to open up a sample file here that I actually built in last week's webinar, which was our sort of intro to how to get started and build things. So if you've watched the previous ones, you'll recognize this. Here we go. This is a sample page out of a cookbook that's actually published on the platform from Williams-Sonoma. Really great app, great cookbook, really good recipes. So let me just show you a little bit about how I built this one first, and then I'll explain what we're going to do with the snapping function. So this is the first page of our layout, and you can see I've used the MagPlus's two-layer architecture here. We have a top layer that can scroll over the top of this background layer, which stays static. These are set over here in our layers palette. So we have our A layer, and if I turn that off, you'll see what's on that A layer. It's all the text. Then we have a couple of B layers. I'm just using the main content layer, and that's where my image lives. So if I turn that off, you can see that that's where the image is. I'm going to jump out into our simulator and show you what this looks like when it's all rendered. So this is what a user would actually see if they were looking at this page on the iPad. You can see that when they first open up the page, you can see that title here and a little bit of the recipe boxes peeking out from below. If I turn the device, it works in both orientations, and we still have this this little bit of title here so people can see there is something down below to scroll up into. And if I start scrolling, you can see it's a free scrolling layer. You can read the recipe at any time. Of course, you can double tap the screen to turn off that text, turn off that top layer, and see just the big beautiful image behind it. Double tap brings the text back. And in this vertical, verticals are what we often call pages because it's like a page, but it can have sort of infinite vertical depth to it. So in this vertical, I've added a second recipe down below this one. So I keep scrolling, and then at some point I get this new image pops into place, and if I keep scrolling, I see this next recipe come into view. But when I first get to this, when I get to this transition, all I get at first is that. Now, if I'm a user, I may not know that hey, there's another recipe down below this. Maybe I don't keep scrolling. So as a designer, as somebody presenting this content, I want this to be what they see when they first get there. I want that title to pop into view, and I want this to be the layout that they see. And we do that through snapping. And really what snapping is a way to make that A layer, although it's free scrolling and the user can always scroll it up and down, it's to give it a sort of default position that it'll snap into when that slide changes, when that background layer changes and we get to a new page as we've set it up in InDesign. So let me jump back into the InDesign and show you what I mean. If I open up my Pages palette here, you'll see I'm on the first page now. If I go to my second page, here's that second recipe. So adding a second page in InDesign is the way that you add a second slide, a second B-layer image that'll transition in as soon as the user scrolls down far enough. And you can see my text is set kind of where I want it to be here, but the problem is it's free scrolling. There's no snap set on it, so it takes a while to scroll up into that area. So now I'm going to add snapping. And that's done over here in our plugin. You can see there's a bunch of options and things you can set here in the plugin, and snapping is just this little pull down right here, and right now it's set to none. That's always the default. If I just turn this on to outer top, and I'll explain what these are in a minute, outer top, inner top, and top, let's hit fast review and see what effect that has. Now I've turned the snapping on for the A layer. Snapping only really works on the A layer because the B layer always snaps to the top. It's a full screen sort of slide by slide view. Let me jump back out to the simulator. So now we scroll up, we get to the bottom of this page, and that transition happens. You can see there that when I scrolled up far enough, let me go through this again, that text snapped all the way to the top of the page. So I'm scrolling, it comes into view, and now all of a sudden it snaps. In fact, it snapped too far because I'm in this my horizontal view. So if I go back here, I snapped it to outer top. Outer top is the very outside of this edge, and whether I'm in horizontal or vertical view. If I turn on my bezel guide over here, you'll see the visible area. In my horizontal view, my landscape view, let me turn on that guide, you can see that outer top area, that very top pixel area here is not visible, so my title's actually snapped out of the way. That's obviously not what I want. Let's try a different setting here. If I change this to inner top is the inside. You can see it sort of bounded by this square box here. It's the inside edge of whichever view I'm looking at rather than the absolute outside edge. So let's hit fast review again and you'll see what difference that makes. I know we're not getting we're still not getting the view that we want, but we'll get to how to do that. So now I'm scrolling up to get to this area, and now you can see that my snap, let me do this again. As soon as my A layer here crosses the halfway point of the screen, that's when my snap kicks in. That's what tells it, okay, there's a new A layer here, and snap to that position. So here you can see it's not doing any snapping. As soon as I get it up there, that snap kicks in, and here it's snapping where I want it, snapping on that inside edge. And now if I turn it, let's see how it views in this area. You'll see it's still snapping to that inside edge. So outer top is this very outside of the page, inner top is this inner square, and top is the relative top. So inner and outer think of as being absolute, think of top as being relative. And I'll show you what that means. So that's going to be the top regardless of what the top is, because the top is obviously different in horizontal or in vertical view. Alright, so now let's scroll up and we'll see that when we get across our halfway point, okay, here I am at the top of this view. Now if I turn it, it's actually going to adjust because I've said relative top basically, and here's the top of this one. So let me scroll this back down. Let's see that snap in action again. I'm scrolling up, that comes into view, I get across my halfway point, and I snap to this top. So top is the one you're probably going to use the most if you're doing a dual orientation design. If you want it to work in both orientations and you want to control how that layout's going to look, top is probably the one you're going to use most. Outer top and inner top are just there to give you more options, more choices about how that design changes when somebody rotates. But we still don't have this where I want it to. I want the snapping to happen as soon as this image comes into view. I want it to snap right about there. I just want to see that title, so I get that same nice layout that I already set up on the first page. So let me show you the little hack of how we get around that. The system just reads top of the screen. So what I need to do is change what the top of that A layer is, because it's taking this A layer, which you can see here by this grouped box. It's taking this whole A layer and it's snapping it up to the top of the page. So I need to change what the top of the A layer is, and I do that by just using a little invisible box. So let me make sure I'm on my A layer. I'm just going to grab my box tool. I'm going to draw a little box. Doesn't matter how big it is. I'm not going to put anything in it. And then I'm going to drag this up to the top of the page here, and I'm going to group it with this. So now, as far as the system can see, this, the top of the page here, is the top of the A layer, and this is what it's going to snap up to the top. So the trick that I've done is I've created a bit of invisible space between where I want the visible elements to actually appear, this title here, and what the system sees is the top of the A layer. So let's see if I got this to work the way I wanted it to. Alright, so here on my first page you can see I don't need to do any snapping because there's no scrolling involved. I've decided that this is where the A layer starts. But now as I scroll down, as soon as that A layer comes into view, oh, my snapping didn't work. Let's try this again. Let's go back and troubleshoot this and see where we went wrong. Let's ungroup everything. Let's turn that one off. Let's ungroup all that as well. Let's try this again. So here's my invisible box. Oh, I know why it didn't work. When I created a new group, so let's go through this process again. So now I've drawn my invisible box up there. I've got all my individual A layer elements here. Now I want to group all these things together because I want the system to see this as one group of things. The A layer is sort of one monolithic object that I want to snap to the top. What happened when I tried to do this before is that I had all of these things grouped down here. Then I created a new group by essentially turned the A layer into a new object by creating a new group, and when I did that it turned my snapping setting off over here because, as I mentioned, the default is always none. It's going to assume that you don't want snapping until you tell it you do. It's a good thing to remember. This happens a lot in Mag Plus, actually, that when you ungroup and group things, and grouping is a really valuable tool to use within your Mag Plus layouts because it lets you control what elements move together. Anytime you ungroup and create a new group, things that you've set for that group will default back to their default settings. So if you've used any pinning, that'll turn off. If you set an object ID, maybe you're doing a link of some kind in which you need this object ID, that'll reset. So if you run into that issue, always check and make sure you didn't just group and ungroup something, and if you did, make sure that the settings you want are set for the new group. So let's try this again. To group this, I'm just going to right click on the A layer, select all the items, and I'm going to hit my Command G to group it all together. So you can see over here now my snapping is set to none. Let's set that again to top. Now let's see if we got it to work. If not, I may be out of ideas. Okay, we scroll up. This comes into view, and there you can see it did snap. If I move it a little bit here, you'll see it snaps right back down to the setting I want. So it's actually snapped this little box up to the top of the page here. We just can't see it because it was an invisible box. No content was put inside of it. And if I turn, you can see that skips down. Now here, because I've said top, it's moving this box down to this edge, which pushes this whole monolithic object that I have down. So that's something I'd want to tweak and play with a little bit to make sure it wasn't pushing this out of view, because obviously that's not ideal. If I come back here and I set it to, let's say, inner top, that should solve my problem. Actually, no, I wanted to set it to outer top because I want that to come up a little bit higher. Let's try outer top and hit fast review. Another point I want to make here is you see me doing this and trying different things and saying, oh wait, no, I wanted to do that. That's really the point of our fast review function. Here I'm using the simulator. If you were using this, you'd probably have your iPad next to you, next to your computer, and you'd be reviewing directly to that iPad. But that's really the point of fast review, is that you can just try stuff and say, what happens if I do inner top? What happens if I do outer top? How does that change the effect here? So there you see, it's not moving because there's no relative setting. It's absolute outer top is where it's staying. So in this view, I get a little bit of this recipe box popping up here at the bottom. In this view, I don't. Hope that makes snapping a little clearer. I'm going to show you another example now just in a completely different kind of layout, and show you how that snapping was used. This is a page out of vertical out of Transworld Snowboarding, one of our clients, and an absolutely gorgeous magazine. I really recommend checking it out. And the best part is snowboarding's issues are all free now, so you can go download them and see some of the best examples of Mag Plus design out there and usage of the tools without paying a dime, and some really great content and videos and photos, even if you're not a snowboarding fan. So let me just fast review this to the device. Oh, forgot to save it. So let's go here. We'll just save over the one that I have. If you haven't saved a file, it's going to make you do that before it lets you review. This is a little bit longer. I talked about multiple pages, so this is about 4 pages in it, so it can have multiple photos in this vertical. It's essentially kind of a photo essay. And so it's going to take a little bit longer to review here. All right. So now we see how this works. So I'm scrolling down. We get this nice kind of fading out effect here, which you can see they've done over here by putting a black box down below on the A layer. I get my nice little arrow that tells me there's something more coming. As I keep scrolling up, you can see that this background image snapped into view, and this little caption here snapped into view, and this little arrow, which is the only thing on the A layer. This is what snapped to that position right there. See, if I move it a little bit, it keeps snapping down to where it is. Let me go up another slide. Same thing there. Let me show you this in vertical so you can see the whole thing. So you can see if I move that, it's always snapping to that spot. So let's go down in our pages here and see how they did that. So here's my little arrow. This is the only thing that's visible. Here's the box they've drawn, the designer there has drawn, to kind of cheat that system and make sure that when it snaps into view, it's not snapping all the way up here. I don't want it coming over my caption. I want it to appear here. So I've just created an invisible box, or this designer's just created an invisible box that stretches all the way from the top of the page down to where I want that thing to appear. And if I select this object and we go over here, you can see it's snapping to outer top. That's why it's not moving when I change device orientation. Let's just change this to top and fast review it, and then you'll see the difference that that makes, because now it's going to say, all right, I'll snap it to the relative top, whatever the top of that view is, whether it's horizontal or vertical. And there's a 128 pixel difference between the top. All right, so now we scroll down. This pops into view. Now let me change the orientation. You can see it pushed it down. In fact, it pushed it down out of view because there's enough distance here with my invisible box that it's pushing it all the way down. But you can see how that moves. So that's snapping. It's a really good tool. It really is one of those pieces like pinning of the Mag Plus platform that you got to get in and just sort of play with your own content and see how it affects things that come in. But it's super valuable for giving you control over how these verticals look as the user is scrolling down, letting you decide, even though the user can always scroll that A layer, you can decide what layout they see when they first get to that view. And again, go in and try some of these different top, outer top, inner top, try some different invisible boxes here, hit the fast review and see what effect it has. So let me jump out of this now. Let's get into some video and audio. So I'm going to use a page out of Popular Science that I like to use to demonstrate video because it has a very cool video that goes along with it. And it's a nice small video file, so you won't be spending a lot of time watching me wait for fast review to come in. So here's a page out of an older issue of Popular Science from a gray matter column where the author is talking about how stuntmen light themselves on fire without getting hurt. It's a very cool image, beautiful image, of course, but there's also a video of this hand being lit on fire, which is a very cool thing to see. So let's say the way that Popular Science actually used this when they did this article is that they wanted that video to just play when the user came onto the page. They didn't want the user to have to initiate it or do anything to see it. They wanted it just to happen, just this really cool sort of, oh my gosh, this page is coming to life sort of effect. So the way I add any video in Mag Plus is I first select an object on either my A or my B layer. And that really is, do I want my video to be on the A layer or the B layer, the background or the foreground layer? So I'm going to select an object first, and that becomes the reference object for that video. And the reason that's important is, first of all, you want to let the system know which layer this video belongs on. And also because if you have any pinning or snapping set for that object, you want your video and the control area, or the touchable hotspot that's going to turn that video on, you want that to move along with your other objects if there's any snapping or pinning that's going to make that object move dynamically when the user turns the device. So the reference object is important. So always start there. Pick an object. In this case, I want this to be on the background layer, so I've picked this whole group. You can see it kind of outlined here. I've picked this whole group that is my background layer. You can see it's on my B slides main content layer here. And then to add a video, all I do is click the Add Video button, and you're saying, I don't see an Add Video button. Well, that's because the plugin here is a little bit too small and I'm missing some buttons. If you've opened up your plugin and said, hey, I don't see these buttons they're always talking about, just grab the corner of your plugin here and you can make it a little bit bigger. For some reason, the default size tends to crop it in a little bit. So now you see our buttons: add link, add movie, add audio. Link we've talked about in some other things, so I'm just going to cover movie and audio. So it's really pretty simple. All right, I have a video I want to go with this image. Click Add Movie. And that does two things. It draws two boxes on top of that reference object that I've just selected, and it draws them the same size as that reference object. So you can see on the top here there's a kind of green shaded, and that's up here on my media areas layer. Media area is literally the area that movie will play inside of it. Think of it like a movie player box, basically. If I turn that off, you'll see that behind it there's this sort of blue shaded box that's drawn, and that's here on my clickable areas. Clickable area is literally the hotspot that will trigger that video to play or to pause. Once it's drawn these boxes, it draws these automatically, and it draws them at the same size as your reference object, but you can resize them and move them around. You're not locked into this. They're just like any other InDesign boxes. So in this case, I'm just going to leave this one full screen because I want people to be able to tap anywhere. And same thing with my media areas. I'm going to leave it big here because I've sized my video to fit this full screen. But I want to use another kind of interesting function to bring on that page coming to life effect that I mentioned. And that's what's called auto start. What that means is as soon as this page comes into view, or as soon as it loads, that video is just going to start playing without the user doing anything. And I control that here by in view or on load. What's the difference between those? Well, in view is something I would probably use here, or could use anywhere. The point of in view is, let's say I had this video down on my second or my third page, deeper into that vertical. I don't want that video to start playing until the user can actually see the video playing. In other words, until they've scrolled up to that point in the story. So that's what in view is. On load means as soon as this page loads, I want it to play. So that's often what you'd use here at the top. Or if you had a video that you were okay with running even when the user couldn't necessarily see it down below. Maybe you wanted them to scroll into an already moving video. Maybe the video is just an animation of some little effect on the page, like that fire on top of this guy's head just burning. That's what onload does. And you should know that when users turn pages or swipe between verticals in their app, the app itself loads the entire vertical at once. So that's why onload will actually load and then start playing, if you have these selections, a video that's down deeper in the vertical than what the user's looking at. So that's our auto start, which I'm going to use. And then I need this other checkbox here, hide media at end. Pretty self-explanatory. It means as soon as that video is done playing, it's going to disappear, and it's going to leave me with a view of this layout behind it. You can see in this case, my video is full screen. So if I didn't have that checked, there would be a big video stuck on its last frame covering my text and everything else. I don't want that. So I'm going to click Hide Media at End, and now let's fast review this and see how it functions. So you can see that this video, where is my video? The video didn't start playing. You know why the video didn't start playing? Sorry, it's early in the morning and I haven't had my coffee. Because I didn't point it to an actual video to play. I got so excited about our auto start and hide media at end, I forgot to tell you the most important part, which is you have to tell it what video to play. It won't figure that out by itself. So that's done here under source types. There's two ways you can have a video play. a file, which means that that'll be embedded, so it'll travel along with that issue file. It'll download as soon as the user downloads that issue file, and whether they're online or offline, that video will be there and it'll play. That's the one to use the most often. It's going to give you the highest quality. It's going to work for users even when they're offline. The only trade-off there is that it's going to increase the file size of your overall issue. The videos are among the biggest contributors to having a large file size. So especially if you're going to have a really long video, something that's more than a few minutes, then you might want to think about streaming it. And in that case, you can choose URL and then just enter the URL of where that video is going to be found. If you're thinking about things like YouTube or Vimeo videos, those don't work as well streaming, and the kind of standard ways that you would grab an embedded link to maybe stream that video through to your website doesn't really work in this inside of this app environment. So the way to stream it is to take that video file, put it on a server somewhere where you can get a direct HTTP link for it, and put that in here. If you use Dropbox, which is a service we love and recommend, there's a public folder that will give you a direct URL for anything you put in that public folder. I'll show you here in my Dropbox. Oh, I don't have my public folder turned on here. But inside of Dropbox, there's a public folder. Anything you put in there, you can get a URL for. So that's one way to test your streaming if you want to actually stream a file. In this case, though, I want to embed it because it's a pretty short movie and I want it to play at really nice high quality. So if I just click File, then I can point to this file, and this is my Burning Hand movie here. Now it's a .mov. In terms of what file formats are supported, well, it's anything that the iPad will play. All we're really doing is using the iPad's embedded video player, really the same thing you use when you're watching a movie in iTunes. It's just that it's going to appear without all the normal frame around it. So stick with .movie or M4V or some of the file formats that the iPad natively plays, and you can find those out on the iPad specs page on Apple's site. So this is .mov. Click Open. So now you can see here it shows me what movie is going to play. And I've chosen inline movie here as the content type. I'll go through those in a minute, but let's see now if we can get this video to actually play here. So as soon as that page loads, you can see that that video starts playing. Video ends and it disappears, and I'm left here with my layout behind it. Now because I've left that hotspot, my clickable area on the full screen, if I tap anywhere on here, it's going to play that movie again. If I tapped again in the middle, it's going to pause that movie. If I tap again, it starts playing. So that's kind of a cool effect for these types of movies where you want that page to just come alive. But maybe you have a different type of movie where you want it to be sort of a pop-up to play on top of this, or you want to have some play and pause controls while the movie is actually playing. Let me show you how that works. So now I'm going to make this frame. This is the area that my video is going to play in. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. In fact, I'll make it real small right here. And I'm going to take my clickable area and I'm going to make this smaller as well. In fact, I'm going to add a little instruction for the user, because now I'm going to set it so it doesn't autoplay. So I got to tell the user some way to activate this cool embedded video I have. So let's just make a really ugly sort of play label here. I want to make sure I get that on my right layer. I'm going to put it here on my A layer. And I'll just scoot it in here. Oop, I still have it on my clickable areas. There we go. Now I'm on my A layer. And I'm just going to put that play button underneath my clickable area here. So as long as somebody clicks around this play button, it'll play this file type. And now in terms of the content type, in terms of the way that I want this to play, instead of an inline movie, I'm going to have it play as a pop-up movie. I'm going to take off the auto start, because in this case I want the user to actually do it, but I still want it to go away when they're done with it. So let's hit fast review again and watch this come. And movie files will make it take a little bit longer for the fast review to happen, because it's embedding that movie file into the actual file it's building. So now I click my hotspot here. Oop. There we go. I was clicking off of it. I click my hotspot. You can see that video pops up. Do that again. That video pops up in a little player here, grays out the background, plays my video file, and then goes away. There's one more option for how you can have videos render that's kind of similar to what we did on the first kind, but slightly different. Let me show you how that looks. In this case, I'm not going to change either one of these things. I'm going to leave them the same here. But I'm going to change the content type to full screen movie. Full screen movie is the behavior you're probably most familiar with. If you go to click play in an iTunes movie you've downloaded, you can see how it kind of takes over the whole screen and plays, but also gives you some controls around it. And here I'll just uncheck this so that it stays on screen when we're done, and then we can dismiss it as we want to. Let me jump back out to the simulator when this comes in. Okay, so now we have our play button. When I hit it, you see the whole page goes away. If I tap this, I get my play and pause and forward buttons down here. I get my little scrubber here so I can actually grab it as a user and scrub my way through it. And when I'm all done, I get my done button. Also, full screen is going to resize that movie when I turn. So now it's going to play a little bit bigger in the other view. And then when it's all done, I can click done. Now I can still leave the hide media at end here, so that goes away. This is a really useful thing to use if you have a longer video. You know, maybe you want an autoplay video. You want that page to come to life when the user first gets there, but you don't want them to have to sit and wait through the whole thing. If you choose inline movie, there's no controls on it. The user's literally going to have to sit there and wait for that movie to finish playing and then disappear. The advantage to full screen movie is that you get back these controls. So now if I tap it, I can go, you know what, I've seen that before, I don't want to see it again. Let me click done and it'll go away. There's one more trick around movies I want to show you. As I mentioned, this play button is a little bit inelegant. So we do have a function called control images that we can use to actually give us a play button and then a pause button as the video is playing. So let me just delete all this again and we'll kind of start from scratch here. So let's first put our movie in, and I'm just going to select my object. I'm going to click my add movie button. There I get my two boxes. I'm going to turn off this media areas box. I'll leave it full screen, but I'm just going to make that go away so I can look at this. So now what I'm doing is making my control image box a little bit smaller, because what I'm going to do is add a play and a pause button to this. So let me draw a box, and I'm going to put it here on my A layer. Again, these can be on either layer. And now I'm going to go out and I'm going to grab a play button that I've already found here. And then I'm going to use, there's some tools up here that are really handy in InDesign that'll fit an image you've put in there to the frame. Oh, that made it the wrong thing. Let me hit fit. There we go, fit proportional. So what I want to do, I just click that so that this image of the play button fits itself to the size of the box I've drawn. And then I always like to use this other button which says fit frame to content. So now it's going to shrink that frame down so that it's exactly the size of this box. That way I don't have any extra sort of pixels around it. I'm going to move this over here into my layout underneath that hotspot. So now where the user sees the play button will also be the tappable area. But now I have to tell the system that this is a control image. In other words, I want this image to actually change as a media file is being played. So that's done up here under my object type. You can see there's a bunch of different object types here. Most of the time these are set automatically when you say, oh, I want to add a movie or I want to add a link. In this case, you can manually set it to control image. You get a couple more fields here. One is the reference object ID, and what that's basically saying is, okay, what movie do you want this to control? Remember before we added the movie, we had to pick an object here on the background, and that became the reference object for that movie? Well, that's the same reference object I want to use for my control image. That's how it knows, all right, this is the movie that I'm supposed to play. So I'm just going to select this object I did in the first place. I'm going to copy its object ID. And this gets automatically assigned when you click Add Movie or Add Audio. By default, there is no object ID on objects because you don't really need them unless you're doing something like this. But as soon as you click Add Movie, it'll say, okay, here's the object ID for this particular box or this block. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back to my control image, and I'm going to paste it in there. And there's a couple different kinds of control image you can use. Single means that that this button is going to disappear when the movie's playing and then reappear. On-off means that it's going to look for a second button, typically probably a pause button or a stop button, and it's going to load that while the movie's playing and then make that disappear as soon as the movie's done playing and load this play button again. And sequence means that it will do the same thing, but rather than just load one image while the movie's playing, it's going to load multiple images, sort of evenly spaced out during the length of that movie playing. I'm just going to do on-off here so you can see how that's going to work. And let's hit fast review and hope that I've set everything up correctly. Alright, so we got our big play button. Oh, you know what I did? Same thing I did before. I forgot to point it to an actual video file. That's a good clue. Let me show you this again. I've run into this a couple of times, and if you've watched previous webinars, you know I've run into it while I'm doing a webinar. So I hit my play button, and nothing really happened here. It just went black. You say, why is that happening? That's usually what that means is that you haven't actually pointed to a movie file. That's your clue that's the mistake that went wrong there. So now let me go back out and point to our movie file. Alright, now let's hit fast review again. Again, I've left the auto start off because I want people to be able to control this, but I do want it to hide when it's done playing. Alright, now we got a play button. So now I tap that button and you can see that play button turn to a pause button. As soon as the movie's done, it disappeared and that pause button turned back to a play button. Let me go here and show you what happens if we choose here we go, there's our control image. Now let's just choose single and I'll show you what happens there. So remember I said this is going to make that play button disappear while the movie is playing. I don't want a pause button, maybe I just want it to go away. So now you see there's no button there at all. Movie plays. Boom, that play button comes back into view. Now the way that I've set this up, you say, okay, but I only loaded this play button in here. How did it know where that pause button was? Well, let me show you how you set that up. It's really in your file structure. Let me go into my folder. Here's my folder for this one. Here's my play button, and you can see I've named it play.1.png. So these always have to be PNG files, first thing to know. Now if I've set it to be an on-off, what it's going to do is look in the same place, the same folder, wherever that is, where this play button lives, and it's going to look for something that's named the same, but with a .2 after it. Now let me show you how the sequence works, because you can see I've set up some buttons here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just to make it simple I've actually made them images of numbers. That's doing the same thing. If there's a sequence picked, it's going to go, okay, let me find all the things that are named the same, but with a .1, .2, .3, etc. afterwards. So now let's go here, and instead of my play and pause button, I'm just going to pick my 1 button. So I'm going to pick the first one in the sequence. That's the one I want to load first. I'm going to do my little trick here where I fill the frame with it proportionally, and then I fit my frame around it. Alright. And now over here I'm going to pick sequence. And let's fast review and see if this works. Sort of an odd little feature. There's kind of different things you can imagine this being used for, but let me just show you what the actual effect is when you click it. So you see 2, 3, 4, and it went black, but it loaded the last one 5, which was the last image that I had out in that folder. In here, button 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just before it disappeared. So what it does is it says, okay, there's 5 files here that are going to be part of this sequence, and I'll play them timed equally throughout the length of that video. So if this video were 2 minutes, well, let's say if this video were 5 minutes long, you'd see each one of those numbers for a minute. So that's really most of the stuff around video here. The control images, as I said, are a really nice little powerful tool to make play and pause buttons and just give you and give the user a little bit more control over when those videos play. But that auto start feature is also a really valuable thing to use to get that great effect that you really want to get out of your digital designs. Really take advantage of the fact that this is a digital canvas. You can have these pages just come to life. And again, if you go out to our help and inspiration section, you'll see some cool layouts where designers have used that feature to their advantage, created really nice moving pages and moving effects using that auto start video. The last thing I'm going to show you today, jump out of that, is audio. Audio is really simple. It's even easier, I would say, than video because there's sort of less variables involved. Let me go into my audio folder. Oh, this is not my audio folder. This is a different one here. Alright, let me make sure I grab the right area. I may have actually saved over my audio file. That's fine. We'll still show you how it works. So what I'm going to actually do here is pop back into, let's just pop back into our gray matter file here, and I'll add some audio over the top of it. Here we go. Oh, this is a different file, but nonetheless, it'll work the same way. So let's imagine, for the sake of imagining, that I wanted to add an audio file here to this brochure about the Sikorsky helicopter. Let's say I wanted to add a song in here about it. It really works about the same way as adding video does. I'm going to delete this second page just so it reviews a little bit faster for us. Pretty standard layout I've got here, right? I got my background layer, I've got some text that's going to scroll over the top of it. Let's say I got a little file that I want to embed in this. Again, I'm going to pick a reference object. Always got to start with our reference object, and then instead of clicking Add Movie, I'm going to click Add Audio. It's going to do the same thing. It's going to draw my two boxes. Now in this case, the media areas box really doesn't matter because it's an audio file. There is no visual. So I'm just going to make this small and kind of move it out of the way. The box that does matter, of course, is our clickable areas box. This is where the user can actually click to activate that audio file. So I'm just going to make that a little bit smaller. Where the media areas box does matter is that's what I'm going to choose so that I can point it to my audio file. Again, here, same thing. We can have embedded or we can have streaming. If I click File, it'll default automatically to embedded. Go back to my audio. I do have an MP3 in here. That's good. So now I've pointed to the right thing. Hide media at end, again, doesn't really matter because it's an audio file, so there's nothing to see to make it go away. Auto start works exactly the same way. So that's really great if you want, if you want a sort of soundtrack or a sound effect to start playing when somebody comes under the cover, and we've seen a lot of really great effects like this. If you look at the most recent issue of Alternative Press magazine, which is one of our clients, really beautiful magazine again. It's a music magazine, so when you load the cover, a song starts playing by the band that's there on the cover. Very cool. In this case, I'll leave auto start off so that we can actually hit the tappable area to start playing it. I've pointed to my file, hit fast review, and let's jump out here and see how this works. Turn my sound way up so that hopefully it comes through. Now in this case, I didn't actually create any play button, so I don't know where to tap. I'll just tap here. And you can hopefully hear that my audio file has started playing. If I tap somewhere again, it's going to pause it.
I was just an acrobat.
Kind of an emo song I've picked here for the Sikorsky helicopter brochure, but that's okay. So this is an area where with audio files you probably really want to use that control image feature. So I'm just going to show you that again quick so you can see how fast it is to actually do. So I've got my audio in here, but now I want a control image. So I'm going to draw a picture box. I'm going to make sure I put this on the right layer. I want it on my A layer. I'm going to paste it onto that layer. I'm going to say grab image, grab my play button. Actually, I want to make this kind of smaller so it's a little less obnoxious. I'm going to fit my button. Oop. There we go. I'm going to fit my button inside my frame. I'm going to fit my frame around my button. I'm going to move this over here, and now I'm going to make this control image area a little bit smaller, or this this clickable area is a little bit smaller, and put it just around the button. You might think, like, why not make that clickable area really big? Well, because a single tap can do an awful lot of things within this system. A tap of a hot link will open up a web browser or take you to another page. A tap anywhere on the screen that's not already assigned to something else will call up the navigation. If you've said, well, here's this area as a clickable area, tapping that clickable area is going to start playing that file rather than calling up the navigation for the user. So it makes sense to be a little bit judicious about where you put your clickable areas. All right, now I need to tell this control image what file is it trying to actually control. And I need to say, yep, this is a control image. So I pick my media areas box. Here's my reference object. Go back to my control image, paste that in. In this case, I'm going to do a play and a pause button. Let's see if we got this working. All right, there's my play button. That's good. The song starts playing, changes to a pause button. That pause button's going to stay there.
I was just an acrobat.
Or until I click it again. When I tap it again, changes back to play. All right, one more really cool thing about that we can do here in audio. And I'm just going to start from scratch and show you this again. All right, so I got my audio file. Select my box, hit add audio, get my two boxes here. In this case, I'll just leave them both really big. Go to here, point to my audio file. Boom, there we go. All right, so all I need to do, I've got my audio file embedded. You can see it's literally about a 10-second process. But I want to actually add this to my playlist. And playlist is a really cool function that lets people control embedded audio files from anywhere within the app. So let's hit fast review and I'll show you what that looks like. We just added this in our 3.0 function, and already some of our clients are taking really good advantage of it. So I can tap anywhere and my song starts playing. But if I bring up my navigation, you can see that now I've got a new button up here in my menu in my navigation called Playlist. If I tap that, I'm going to see this embedded audio file here. And I would see here any audio files that were embedded anywhere in my issue that I had checked this add to playlist function for. So again, if you go look at that alternative press magazine that I mentioned, you'll see that they've got a nice long playlist here because of course it's a music magazine. They're writing about a lot of bands. They've got a lot of audio files and a lot of audio samples in there. But I can actually just jump in here, hit the playlist, start playing a song I really like as I'm reading the magazine. Whenever I want to pause that, I can just come back up here into the playlist and play and pause or switch to the next track. It's a really fun feature if you want to embed some audio and some songs in. All right, that's all I got today. I hope that was helpful. Again, if you want to watch this again or watch any of our other ones, pop on out to our website, to the Help and Inspiration section, and tune in next week when we have, or actually in 2 weeks from now, when we have another one about creating interactive elements. Thanks.